And now back to my international line. You're on the air. Hello.
Yeah, hi, Art. This is John. I'm calling you from Ensenada, Mexico.
Hi, John.
And we're hearing you on Kogo.
Kogo?
Yeah.
I'll bet. Yes, they go south quite nicely from San Diego.
Yeah, what I wanted to call you about, although I live in Mexico, I work in Trinidad. And for those of your listeners who don't know where Trinidad is, that's at the south end of the West Indies chain, just north of the north coast of South America.
Yes, sir.
Before I go on to what I wanted to tell you about, something that happened to me recently. You mentioned that you are heard in South America, and I'm wondering if there's any way I can pick you up in Trinidad.
Yes.
Is that a shortwave station?
No. Try 1200 on the dial from San Antonio. It just goes firing down there.
Okay, 1200 on the dial.
Yes, sir.
I'll give that a try. Okay, the reason I'm calling you, I'm captain of a seismic survey vessel. We've been doing some seismic work off the east coast of Trinidad.
Oh.
For the Trinidad oil monopoly. It's called Petrotrin.
Yes, sir.
And there's a consortium of oil companies that fund this. The vessel is American-owned. I'm not going to mention the name of the company.
All right.
The seismic team, oddly enough, from your last call, is Norwegian. That is the people who run the computers and the actual seismic survey.
Right.
So we were. This occurred on the 28th of December at about 17:30 local time in Trinidad. We were doing a transect heading essentially west, going back toward the island of Trinidad, about 30 miles offshore. The water depth was about 120 to 130 meters at that point.
Right.
We tow an array. The furthest from the vessel is 3.5 miles behind us. There's an array of 7 objects, 4 of which are the transponders that send the signal. Those are operated by compressed air, and then there's 3 that are the receivers.
And what is the object of these? In other words, you're
looking
for...
it sends a shock down. In other words, they used to use explosives in the old days. Now we use compressed air.
Yes, sir.
It sends a shock wave down, and that is then reflected from the subsurface strata back up to the receivers, and then that signal comes up the wire to the computers.
And you're able to map it. I
and
understand.
They get a picture. Yeah.
All right. We don't have a lot of time. We don't have a lot of time here. So what did you find, or what happened?
Okay. Well, just forward of that, about a mile forward of that, we tow a thermistor V-fin, which takes a continuous reading of salinity, temperature, and depth, so that the computers can make sure that the sonic signal is accurate. And forward of that, we have a side scan sonar, which takes a side picture of so that you get a contour of the bottom.
We've got about 30 seconds.
Right. Okay. So we're towing this, and the thermistor V-fin, an alarm went off, and the thermistor V-fin came flipping up to the surface. So the scientists came running up from the computer room, and about that time the array went over this spot.
Okay, listen to me. Can you hold through the news? That's all I can do. I've got news. I've got to go to it. I want to hear the rest.
I understand. Okay.
I want to hear the rest of the story. Can you hold?
Sure.
All right, stand by. You won't. All right, now back to you, Captain. You're on a ship again, located where?
In Trinidad. Well, off the east coast of Trinidad.
East coast of Trinidad.
Right.
And you were dragging these devices behind you, measuring things, and when we left off, something you said popped up, and I didn't get what that was.
Yeah, it's called a thermistor V-fin. It looks like it's a big fiberglass thing about 8 feet wide, looks kind of like a big yellow fiberglass kite, and it flies under the water, taking a continuous measuring of salinity, temperature, and depth, and that information is sent up to calibrate the computers so that the sound signal that we send down sends up accurate information. Anyway, this thing came flipping up to the surface with all kinds of alarms going off, and everybody ran up on the bridge. I happened to be on watch at this time. I just relieved the mate, and it was just getting dark. The sun had set, and it was starting to get dark. So we were moving at about 3.5 knots, towing all this stuff.
Right.
And about the time that the array of transponders, I should say, passed over the place where the thermistor had come up, the whole sea lit up back there.
Wow.
You know, like a bright white light shining in the sea.
Yes, sir.
So there was some cloud cover at the time, and there were like beams, almost like you would think a searchlight was shining up out of the sea, because you could see it reflected on the clouds. So I looked in the radar, and I was, monitoring this place on the radar as we continued on, because you can't turn or stop or anything when you're towing all this stuff.
Right.
And meantime, they're trying to reel in the thermistor V fin and, get it back on board to see what happened. And a target appeared on the radar, which at that time was about 4 miles behind us, so about a mile behind the array we were towing. And it was a big target. It looked, like almost the size of a supertanker would show up at that distance on our radar.
Yes.
And we continued our transect. We hauled in the thermistor V fin, and it was mashed. It had hit something really solid. Now, the bottom there is pretty muddy, and the thermistor V fin is anyway, kept well off the bottom, so there's really no chance that it hit anything on the bottom.
What do you think you encountered?
Well, that's a good question. About then, it occurred to somebody to look at the side scan sonar trace.
Right.
So they tracked it back to the time that, just before because it would have passed over whatever it was first. It's the first thing in our array. And it showed on our starboard side a large metallic object. Well, at least you can't be sure it's metallic, but it was a strong echo. So, it was either rock or metallic, and there are no rocks there. And this side scan sonar throws a signal out sideways on both sides. It doesn't show anything directly underneath.
I understand.
And this object was separated from the seabed. So, it could have been a submarine, okay? Maybe the thermistor V fin hit a submarine. But this thing that came up on our radar was really big. It was a lot bigger than any submarine that I've ever heard of. And I never heard of a submarine that had searchlights or lights or anything that shone up into the sky like that. So
something very, very large came up out of the sea.
Yeah, it would be in the class of a VLCC, a very large crude carrier, that size of vessel, or that size of target.
All right, I've got to move on here, but I want to know, how did you lose it, or how did it disappear, or...
Well, the target remained on the radar for about 20 minutes as we were, continuing to track west, and then it just, faded out or disappeared. I don't know whether the thing submerged or went off somewhere, but in any case, we didn't pick it up on the radar. And, we turn around and go back, and we do a sort of zigzag transect all along that area, and we didn't encounter anything like that again. So
well,
I guess my question for anybody else that's listening is if any other mariner or anyone encountered any similar experience where they've seen lights come up out of the sea like that.
We'll call it an unidentified submerged object.
I guess so, yeah.
A USO. Captain, thank you.
Okay.
You take care, my friend. Well, whoa, there's a story for you. Holy mackerel.